Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The Japanese carmaker Honda is to close its entire plant in Swindon with a loss of 3,500 jobs. The company is expected to make a formal announcement tomorrow. Production will end by 2022, with manufacturing going back to Japan. Honda has made vehicles in Swindon for more than 30 years, and today the Unite Union described the closure as a shattering body blow to the heart of UK manufacturing. Well, John Kay is in Swindon for us this evening. John.
Yes, Swindon was chosen by Honda in the mid-1980s, Clive. This old airfield was transformed into a huge car production plant, and ever since then it's really been at the heart of this town's economy, the heart of its economic revival. So when news leaked out this afternoon that it could close with the loss of 3,500 jobs immediately here, but thousands more involved in the supply chain, people here just absolutely shell-shocked. They've not been told officially yet, no formal announcement inside there. It leaked out to journalists and on social media earlier, but as people are driving out tonight at the end of their shift, what they say time and time again is they are completely gutted.
Heading out of the factory to a showroom near you. But for how much longer will Hondas be made here in Swindon? Workers leaving this evening express dismay.
The reaction is terrible, yeah, doom and gloom. Lots of families, lots of people with children, like ourselves. So yeah, gutted really, yeah, absolutely gutted.
Where does this leave you?
This is about the job, but so yeah, apart from that, don't know no more really, yeah, just gutted, yeah.
And have you been given any kind of timescale or explanation about the decision?
No, we haven't been told any news, so we'll just wait and see. We're hearing there might be a meeting tomorrow, so we'll just wait and see what they say about that tomorrow. But obviously it's all over social media, so yeah, that's all we know at the moment.
So that's you found out on social media?
Yes, we found out on social media, yeah.
Last month, Honda announced it would shut the Swindon site for 6 days in April to deal with any disruption after Brexit. The reasons for a more permanent closure will now be debated by politicians and business leaders. But for this woman, recording a moment of local history this afternoon, it's simply a sad day.
It's been here for many years, and it's just one of the many companies that we're losing for one reason or another.
I've got 2 kids, I've got a missus. Obviously this is my full-time job, this is my life, this is my lifeline. So obviously without this I'm now, well, technically I'm jobless.
And I've got grandchildren who live in Swindon and their parents work here, so I am really concerned about them really.
Since it opened here in the 1980s, Honda has been a crucial part of Swindon's economic transformation, from an old Wiltshire railway town to a thriving young business community. There are now 3,500 workers employed at the site, but
you can double or triple that in terms of the job losses potentially in the supply chain. So a very significant moment, bad news for the car industry.
over the decades, workers here in Swindon have known nervous times before. And in an uncertain global market, some worried this year could bring bad news. But few expected anything as bad as the closure they are fearing tonight. John Kay, BBC News, Swindon.
Well, our business editor Simon Jack is here. Simon, sadly, this is just the latest in a string of disappointments for the UK car industry.
Yeah, we had the Nissan announcement they weren't going to build the X-Trail SUV here. Now, for all of these announcements, there is no one reason why a company makes such a drastic decision. People rush to say this must be Brexit related. There are other forces at work here. For example, the EU has just done a trade deal with Japan, which means Japanese cars can come into the EU from Japan without tariffs over time. That reduces the rationale for having the manufacturing in the UK or indeed the EU. So that's one reason. But I think the more broader question here is whether it's Sony who've moved HQ to Europe, whether it's Panasonic who've done the same, whether it's Nissan who've reversed their decision, whether it's Honda's decision today. There is a sense that a deal that was struck between the UK and Japan back in the 1980s, when Margaret Thatcher said we are the perfect outpost for you to manufacture here in the UK with access to the EU, that deal has slightly been broken, and the Japanese will say we sent a 15-page dossier in September 2016. We had the ambassador making these these warnings. The company management have said that there are concerns about that uncertainty, and that by failing to produce that kind of clarity, that long-term promise was broken, and that Japan, as an industrial complex, all its different industries feel they are in a way are, dismissed or, exonerated from their commitment that they made 30 years ago.
Sure. OK, Simon, many thanks. Simon Jack there.
Now, in a devastating blow for British car making, Honda is set to announce it's closing its plant in Swindon by 2022. It puts 3,500 jobs at risk. The Japanese car giant hasn't confirmed the claims, but the local Conservative MP said he had spoken to Honda, which was clear the decision was based on global trends and not Brexit. Last month, the firm said it was planning a 6-day shutdown to prepare for any Brexit-related disruption. Well, our reporter Minnie Stevenson is in Swindon. Minnie, you've been talking to workers there.
Yes, Fatima, it's worth remembering that this news broke before Honda had even managed to tell their own staff about it. I spoke to people as they left here, and some of them said, listen, the first I heard about these job losses was when I read about it online. As for Honda, no official comment coming from them this evening, but we do understand an announcement will be coming early tomorrow morning. And what will be crucial in that announcement is whether the company directly blame Brexit and some of the uncertainty which has followed, or whether they instead cite global pressures. But one thing is definitely for certain, as we spoke to workers as they left here, there's a real sense of devastation.
Inside the Honda factory, the Japanese car giant rooted in Swindon for more than 3 decades, until now. This evening, the news that the plant is expected to announce it will be closing its doors by 2022. And with it could go the jobs of more than 3,500 people. With MPs tonight calling it a devastating blow for Britain and the UK car industry. A decision made amidst the enormous uncertainty brought by Brexit. Uncertainty being felt acutely by workers here.
So you're pretty hacked off today?
Yeah, I mean, the government's completely incompetent handling of the whole thing doesn't help either, does it? What are we, like 44 days away from Brexit? And they haven't got a clue. They can't even decide for themselves what Brexit means. This is idiocy of epic proportions.
And how long have you worked at this factory?
24 years.
Now, here in Swindon, they voted in favour of Brexit, but the uncertainty which has since followed is being felt very personally here tonight, as thousands of jobs hang in the balance. One man we spoke to, who didn't want to appear on camera, says that staff inside have been told tomorrow morning to expect an announcement about their jobs.
And a colossal blow for British business. Honda is the UK's 5th largest car maker, and this is the company's only factory in Europe, with this site alone producing 100,000 cars a year. Only last autumn, Honda said they remained committed to UK production, regardless of the outcome of Brexit. The expected decision comes just weeks after the car giant announced it would be losing hundreds of temporary staff here at Swindon because of a fall in diesel car sales.
We're still awaiting confirmation, but one can't overlook the impacts of Brexit, the uncertainty. We're talking, what, five or so weeks away from the deadline date, and still no deal, no sign of a deal. And that breeds uncertainty. What manufacturers want is certainty. If they're going to put their investment into a new model in this plant, they want that certainty.
The factory has been at the very centre of not only Swindon but the UK car industry for decades now. The prospect of what tomorrow holds hanging over thousands here tonight.
The car company Honda has become the second in the space of just a fortnight to relocate production of a key model back to Japan at the expense of British jobs. The Honda factory in Swindon, where 3,500 people work, will close in 2 years' time. The official announcement about switching production of the Civic is due tomorrow. A new trade deal between Japan and the European Union means, as Nissan said 2 weeks ago, there is no advantage to building cars in Europe.
It has been a day no one here was expecting. Honda employees heading home at the end of the day shift, still taking in the news that their plant is to close.
Ripple effect will be massive, massive. And if this plant closes, that will be felt for a long, long time.
You've just come out of the plant now. What's the mood like there in there?
Concerned. Everyone's concerned. People are concerned everywhere you go, my friend.
Some were blaming Brexit.
As soon as Brexit comes along, the plant needs investment to change from petrol to electric, what company is going to invest in a plant that much money when they don't know if the plant's going to be able to import and export the goods?
And how do you feel about this, sir, and your job?
Well, my job will be gone, wouldn't it?
The Japanese company had previously committed itself to staying in Swindon, where its workforce produced 160,000 Honda Civics last year. Tomorrow it's expected to officially confirm the Wiltshire plant will close in 2022. Politicians have been told there are multiple reasons.
My first hunch was, is this connected to Brexit? Obviously the timing makes you question that, but they have given us categorical reassurance it isn't. That is clear by the fact that they're not moving this production to another European country. It is simply because their falling sales means they have the spare capacity in the Japanese factory. They wish to consolidate them all together.
Honda is the latest in a line of car companies to announce job cuts. 400 are to go at Ford in Bridgend, 4,500 at Jaguar Land Rover in the Midlands. And last month, Nissan cancelled plans to build its X-Trail model at Sunderland.
Whether it's global market forces or fears of Brexit or a combination of both, the closure of this factory will devastate this community. 3,500 jobs lost and more than twice that number in the supply chain.
A timetable for redundancies is expected tomorrow. Union leaders and politicians are not anticipating a change of heart. Paul Davis, News at 10, Swindon.
And we begin with breaking news this morning. The Japanese car manufacturer Honda has confirmed in the last hour that it will close its Swindon plant in 2021 with the loss of 3,500 jobs. The company said it was in response to unprecedented changes in the global automotive industry. Responding to the news that Sky News broke yesterday, the business secretary Greg Clark has said it's a bitter blow to not only the staff at the factory but also thousands of suppliers who will be affected. Well, let's speak to Sky's Helen Ann Smith outside the Honda plant in Swindon. Morning, Helen Ann. I mean, despite the fact that we are hearing time and again from both the business secretary and indeed from Honda that this was a business decision, workers there were shocked by this announcement.
Yeah, absolutely. They simply didn't see this announcement coming. I spoke to a union rep this morning and he said the atmosphere yesterday was one of stunned disbelief, but that disbelief has morphed into anger and he says even betrayal this morning, because remember it was only in autumn that Honda said it was committed to maintaining its manufacturing base here in the UK. Workers simply didn't expect this news. I also understand, speaking to the union, that workers have been sent home today, having received the confirmation that they were expecting this morning following Sky News breaking that story yesterday. And they have indeed had some clarity this morning as well. Clarity that it will be 2021 that this plant will close, clarity on the jobs that will be lost, and clarity too, a little bit, I think, on the reasonings why. Honda saying that it is because of unprecedented changes in the industry, and by that it means a move towards electric vehicles away from traditional diesel and petrol engines. Notably, Brexit absent from Honda's statement this morning. The MPs for Swindon yesterday saying that Brexit had nothing to do with it, although many critics, those in support of a soft Brexit, those who want clarity over Brexit, will not be buying that this morning.
Helen Ann, many thanks. Well, for more than this, we're joined now by Ian Howells, Senior Vice President for Honda in Europe. Mr. Howells, thanks very much for being with us. I suppose there are two very simple, straightforward questions to ask, if not simple answers. You know, why has this decision been taken, and why has the decision been taken now?
Well, certainly this is not a very easy decision, and it's not something we've taken very lightly. We do fully appreciate the impact this has on the local community in Swindon, on our associates there and their families, and it's something that we deeply regret the impact on our employees. But we are actually facing an unprecedented change in the industry, and this is a global change, not something that's specific to the UK or is driven equally by Brexit. It really is a fundamental change in the way that people are looking to buy cars, looking to use cars, and also whether the way legislation is starting to drive us in that direction.
I mean, the statement from Honda this morning mentions, you know, commitment to electrified cars. I mean, if we turn that coin over, I mean, isn't it as much to do with dwindling support for diesel?
Well, diesel and conventional powertrains are all going the same way. They're all in some sort of decline at the moment, and it's all around electrification. That's the way our consumers, our buyers are starting to look at this, and that's what they want. They are actually demanding electrified vehicles.
But why can't electrified vehicles be produced in the United Kingdom? We keep hearing from government, from big business, that the United Kingdom is perfectly placed to take advantage of the expansion in green technology.
Well, what we're looking at from a Honda point of view is where our investment needs to go and where we need to focus that. When we're looking at that investment decision, we have to look at the size of the marketplace, the production capabilities, and really that decision is made for us by the size of that market. So when we're looking at the places where we will be looking to make investment, we're looking at 2 million vehicles a year. That's significantly different from what we have in Europe at the moment, which is about 150,000 vehicles. So therefore, from an investment point of view, we need to look at those bigger marketplaces to support the amount of money that's got to go in to make this transition to electrified vehicles.
I mean, some have suggested this morning that Swindon has perhaps not been making an adequate return for Honda for quite some time. I think capacity was at 150,000 units, and that's not where you needed to be, is it?
Well, the factory is obviously supporting the global supply of the Civic 5-door vehicle, and therefore from that point of view that's going to be driven by global demand, not just demand that might be apparent in Europe. So from that perspective, and this is something that sort of balance things a little bit in terms of that, around 55 to 60% of the vehicle production there is actually going into North America. Only around about 15 stays in the UK, and roughly 25 to 30 is European. So when you look at the global network that the 5-door is being supplied into, we have to take that demand into account.
I mean, the statement from Honda this morning didn't mention Brexit. You mentioned it en passant. I mean, does it have any bearing on this? The suggestion from some is there are issues around the supply chain, particularly if we're moving into a no-deal Brexit situation.
Well, we've been very clear that Brexit is not part of this decision. It's not driven by Brexit, and although we've been very clear on our Brexit position all along, that is not part of this decision today. It is a decision based on a global perspective, and in that respect, we are looking to make our investments in those areas. Unfortunately, that does not involve Swindon in this case.
Does Honda have any involvement in UK manufacturing moving forward post 2021?
Well, we still maintain investments in the UK. We still see it as a good place to be doing business. Of course, we have our Formula One team here, for example, and we are continuing with our research and development activities. What we won't be doing is manufacturing a full-blown car in that respect. We will be continuing to support our customers, both from a supply of vehicles, but also for the servicing of vehicles. So we're not pulling out of the UK, we're not pulling out of Europe. It's unfortunate we've had to make this decision around the manufacturing site, and we'll be working very closely with the unions, with our associates, to make sure that as we go through the consultation process that we make the most of that, and without preempting any decisions out of that, what will be the next steps thereafter, and we'll be fully supportive of that.
I mean, the Swindon factory has been totemic, not just for Honda, but for UK manufacturing as a whole. 3,500 jobs will be lost. There will be others lost as a result of this. Those are not your direct responsibility. But what can you say this morning to those who will not have a job at Swindon, a Honda job in Swindon after 2021?
Well, like I said, we very much deeply regret the impact on them. We are looking forward. Obviously, it's still 2.5 years before the cessation of production will happen. So that's 2021. It does give us time to work with the governments, with the local agencies, with the unions, with our associates, to try and make this transition as smooth as possible. But we fully appreciate whatever we do, we're not going to get over that impact of that the associate, our employee, will not be working for Honda any longer in the production of vehicles.
Brexit, you say, has not played in what you're describing as a business decision, but as a senior businessman, a senior VP for Honda in Europe, what is your assessment of how well the British government has handled this Brexit process?
Well, Brexit we've been very clear on in terms of what our expectations from Brexit were and what we would be looking for from any deal. In terms of the actual impact on this decision, as I made very clear, it's not impacting this decision. But we will still be working with the government and the like to make sure that we end up with something that works for us as a business. We're still producing for 2.5 years. We still need frictionless trade. We still need to be looking at making sure that we have the right employees available to us to support the line production, and making sure that regulation is done in the right way that to support our business. But nevertheless, it's something that we will continue to work on.
Ian House, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, listening to that was the Unite Union's Assistant General Secretary for Manufacturing, Steve Turner. Steve, many thanks for being with us. From what you just heard there, and indeed from what you will have heard from workers in Swindon, I mean, did this come entirely out of the blue?
Well, it did come entirely out of the blue to us, not to workers, of course, who unfortunately had to listen to the future of their plant being discussed on the radio, as opposed to a direct message from the company, including our representatives, of course, who didn't have the courtesy of a discussion prior to the announcement being leaked. But our members feel completely betrayed right now. This is a very loyal, skilled workforce that at the end of the day is no longer wanted by their employer in Swindon. And that's something that we've got to address, and we will be addressing over the course of the next 21 months.
By address, I mean, what do you mean?
Well, if Honda think that they're just simply going to withdraw from the UK without a fight to maintain production here, then they can dream on. That's not
what can you do?
Our position. There is the case of electrification of vehicles, of course. You asked Ian a direct question about why these vehicles can't be produced here in the UK. That's a question that we've been asking for a long time, of course. Ian also speaks about the impact of Brexit, and indeed this was not a decision that was taken on the back of where we are with Brexit. But you can't have 350 lorries a day appearing on the site from the EU, and fears around supply chain disruption as a consequence of Brexit without that factoring into any decision that you take.
So just to be clear, I mean, you're saying that Mr. Howells was at the very least being disingenuous when he said Brexit wasn't part of this?
No, we believe that you can't have disruption to supply chain that will happen if we drop out of the EU without an agreement, of course, when you've got 350 lorries appearing at your site each day coming from the European Union with components that are essential for a manufacturing process. Equally, you've got the EU-Japan trade agreement, of course, that means that, ironically, without a deal, it will be easier to import vehicles from Japan to the European Union than it will from the UK 22 miles away.
Yeah,
and that's a
perverse position. And the UK was one of those that was pushing for lower tariffs
absolutely
as possible as well. But just in terms of the way that this is being described, I mean, clearly the move away from diesel was going to have an effect on any auto manufacturer in the United Kingdom.
And the way that's been handled by government has been quite disgraceful, to be honest. The demonisation of diesel has been a problem for the entire automotive industry, to be fair. But that just transition away from the internal combustion engine, because it's not just diesel, it'll be petrol as well, of course, towards the electrification of vehicles, means a huge amount of work needs to be done, and we need a huge amount of government support to make sure that that happens and we maintain a vibrant, jewel in the crown automotive industry here in the UK, and that's not happening right now. There is no clear industrial strategy, there is no investment strategy, there is no work being done on research and development, and there's certainly no pressure being put on some of these big employers like Honda here to stay in the UK and to export from the UK to these markets.
At the same time, the suggestion, and pretty well fleshed out this morning, has been from some people that actually Honda has stayed longer in the United Kingdom than they would have liked, that they have tried to make Swindon work, but they haven't been able to get to the level of capacity they needed to get to make it viable in the longer term.
Well, they only produce one model, the Civic, in Honda, of course. There are other models that they sell in the European Union that we believe they should be producing here in a plant in Swindon in the UK. So this is about how they mix their models. They have a plant in the United States. It's a big market for them. I can see huge amounts of investment travelling across the Atlantic or the Pacific from Japan, of course, into the United States. They also have a plant in Turkey, and I'd hate to think that there's a lot of investment going into Turkey for importing into the European Union rather than investment here in the UK in new technologies, vibrant technologies that will keep us at the forefront of the automotive industry as we move forward.
Clearly a lot of work then for Unite to do as regards the workers in Swindon over the coming days, weeks and months. Having a Unite representative on the programme this morning, we cannot not ask you about events in the Labour Party yesterday. What is your view?
Well, I'm talking about a serious issue, which is 3,500 people and about 10,000 people in the supply chain as well that will be impacted by this decision. That's what I'm here to talk about, to be fair. I'm an industrial officer of our union. And what happens inside the Labour Party and the egos of 6 or 7 people is down to them. I'm not particularly interested in them, to be honest with you. I'm interested in what's going to happen to our members at Swindon and those tens of thousands of people employed in the supply chain that right now are fearing for their jobs. Their families are fearing and their communities are fearing as well.
Steve Turner, many thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much.